Good evening, everybody. It is late at night, and um, I was going to do a second video, but I got kind of late in the day and then dinner, blah, blah, blah. But I did want to make another one, and on a separate subject. My video got kind of cut off, like mysteriously, I'm not going to lie, because I really did. I erased a lot of my videos that I had that were, the long ones that I had on there, and I erased all those, and so there was no reason for that to cut off like it did. So that's a little sketch, um, but yeah, I'll probably. I think I said pretty much everything I was going to say, but the shame um, thing I might talk about multiple times, if we have time. But yeah, I wanted to bring up this whole the rapture business, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and just how each day is sort of bringing us closer. But not only that, like um, the amount of revelation that has been poured out just this year alone for the people that have been looking, it's just been really something amazing. And, I just really want to discuss, how God is just so much smarter than us. And like, it's just like, even when he's trying to like bring it down to a level that we can deal with and understand, it's still, there's always going to be an aspect of your brain melting because uh, the way that he can do these things, like it's humble and it's also like very simple in its wisdom, and but also like it's just kind of an out there. It's kind of like, what, really, like it's all it never. And when you think about it, like he has to be this way because this is someone who um, has said that this we're going to live forever and we're just going to be, we're never going to get to the bottom or the end of this thing, and so you can't start your temporary life journey, your blade of grass existence, already knowing all of the stuff, like the idea that he would be able to satisfy everything in your brain is just like not a God characteristic, honestly. And like, if you really think about anything in life, like, there's really nothing like that. I mean, there's maybe a few things in this world that you just feel like you can understand fully, but like everything in this world is pretty, if you wanted to become an expert in, if you wanted to just focus on one thing and learn everything about that one thing, you'd be hard pressed to do it. So, so yeah, we're talking about he himself as a topic. It's like, forget it. Um, and so, I just been all the different things that I've been watching lately. I've just been thinking about that a lot, and just how like non-believers, they I feel bad for them because they're kind of on this trajectory. I feel bad for them at first, until I realize, this is, well, let me just go what I was going to say. But, um, it starts off, the unbelievers, they sort of gain traction in society because it was a religious society, somebody, believed something. And there were very few sort of agnostic people out there, or they really weren't able to make themselves known. But in terms of like the Christian religion, it starts off with, well, was there really a boat that, and a flood and whatever? And did Jonah really like get swallowed up by a whale? Like, are we really going to sit here and take these things seriously? Parting of Red Seas and whatnot. And that's sort of like the the first rung of like that argument. And then I don't know about you, but like a little bit of time goes by, especially nowadays, and I don't know, it is just don't look. It's not looking like the most outlandish idea ever that these things could have ever happened. And I think for me personally, just having studied, because it's like you get to that first level and you could decide, yeah, you're right, I'm out, and you bow out, and then you never go any further, or you're you decide, well, I don't know, that's kind of that is, I mean, I don't know, and then you start studying a little bit more, and you study a little bit more, and then the next one after that is about the book itself, and like or you like the idea that something could exist for a long time and no one ever tried to alter it, nothing, and it's the idea that it's the word of God, but men wrote it and all of these things. And if you have read the book, you know that God has a way of working through man that is like it references how he does it in the stories. So that if you've read the book, that's not a huge like um, thing hurdle to get over. But it's like, oh well, how could it not be changed? And because the idea is that if you got all these people that you can control if you change the content of the book, and then you get all these people to believe something together collectively and have them do something. Now you'll be dead and gone, so you won't get to benefit from all the changes that you made, but someone will, and then they get then of course the governments are going to change it to make people do this and that, because that seems feasible to people somehow. They're just looking for something. It's like I could easily go through and change it, and then some people go, "You're right, this is like ridiculous," and they get off the boat. If you stick with it, you see that it's actually quite difficult to do that because there are many, 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 many manuscripts. And you would be hard pressed to just start in the middle, midstream, deciding that you're going to change some of the stuff, alter some of the stuff. And then when are you going to do that exactly? Because it wouldn't. Why would anybody alter the Torah of this small group of people? Like, who's going to alter that? For what? To what purpose? The prophets, the minor prophets, the major prophets. Like, okay, if we're talking about Jesus, we're talking about, which is usually where the arguments are lobbed at, as far as the Christianity coming in and becoming this religion. So it's like, okay, so you're talking about the New Testament? Who's like somebody altered the New Testament? Okay, well, they wrote it down like faster than any ancient text has manuscripts. The earliest manuscripts are like, they might as well be emails. Okay, like all of the stuff that the Greek stuff and all of the stuff that we preserved are like hundreds of years between the original and what they have, the manuscripts that they have. The New Testament was instantly distributed, circulated. So there's many, many manuscripts of that. So once I got through like the third tier, I got past the outlandishness of the stories. I got past um, the impracticality of a book being able to survive for whatever, because to me it shows just the wisdom of God, very simple wisdom of God. It's like when they wanted to stone him before saying that, for blaspheming and calling himself equal with God, and they were going to stone him, and then he just made himself invisible and walked away. There was not that he didn't blind everyone's eyes and then make a do a smoke Batman bomb or anything. He just left that situation because it wasn't his time and it wasn't a big deal. Like he knew that was going to happen, And he didn't, he wasn't always trying to rile them up like that. So, and then when it was time for him to die, he he repeated his claim. Like they weren't even asking for him to say that he was Messiah. They were just looking for something to uh, to be allowed to kill him with, and he volunteered that information at that moment because it was time for him to go. And so, when you read it and you see the nature of his decisions, the nature of God's decisions, like you see that he's laid out this book. He's laid out this book, the Old Testament, which even if you had no New Testament, you could easily glean, you could see that Jesus fulfilled like 300 prophecies and see that he's the Son of God more than likely. So the Old Testament does plenty without the New Testament. But when you see that this is a book that was compiled by some slaves in some podunk part of the world, which they will say as an argument because everything is from a human point of view and everything is, well, if God is God, then he's going to do this flashy thing. He's going to do this, like, God level type of stuff. It's something that they are thinking of their own imagination. But the Bible itself, if you read it, it will show you his character and how he operates, how he does everything. So he works through. It's like, well, why would he just tell the truth, tell it to this one little group? Why would he do this? Why would he do that? And then you have all these questions that you think are valid questions. It's not like they're not valid questions, but you're expecting them to not have answers. You're expecting them to be like, well, this is silly. And it's like, yeah, the very thing that you're calling silly is the very thing that allowed him to compile a book hassle free in front of everybody without anyone paying attention, just over just an extremely long period of time. You got, I forget how many, I think it's like, let's see, there's 27 in the New Testament, so that's 39. So there's 39 books in the Old Testament. So 39 books over, however many years, a couple thousand years, nobody paying attention, nobody watching what little old Israel is doing. And then, boom, New Testament, 30 years, 27 books, 30 years, letters written to churches. And you got the whole thing. You got everything you need. You got a whole book. And it's by the time you figure out that it's dominating the world, and then you try to like reverse engineer that and say, well, somebody could have. No, 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 because God is smarter than you and he knows you better than you. And he knows that if it's not in some, whatever, you're not going to pay attention. You're going to let him hide all of his mysteries and all of his math and all of his calendar dates and all of his characters and all of his types and shadows and all of his prophecy in this whopper of a thing that you think is just for one thing, which is just a religious text. You think it's only doing one job. And God is the God of the Swiss Army knife, and the Bible is doing multiple jobs. And it's just so amazing. So my questioning of it dropped off very early, like in my 20s. I wasn't even questioning it at all. I was just kind of entertaining um, the criticisms just so that I could seem like um, a well-informed person, and some for my own whatever. So I wouldn't have to just be like, I just believe it. Which is fine. And you're better off doing that. You might as well. There's really no point in trying to entertain all this crap because it's not even right. So the people that can just connect to it and don't need a bunch of whatever, like they are getting just as much benefit as the people who are, um, showing themselves approved and studying the word and studying its claims. So there's a reward for everybody, and that's the other thing. It's like God is so, like, y'all don't even understand. Y'all don't even understand, like, it's just brilliant. It's so brilliant, and it's it's just amazing. And so it's bringing me to my next thing that I just can't even believe that there's even more to it. But there's this phenomenon happening that people are figuring out that the Gospels, because the Gospels have always had, when you talk to an atheist or some, whatever, and they want to nitpick about these little details and how they're different here, and it's like, oh, there's so much contradiction and blah, blah, blah. And people are discovering that the Gospels might be not only three different books, three different perspectives of the same thing, but three different gospels for three different audiences, meaning there is an audience of the elect, the bride, the believers who are um, going in the rapture, who are just waiting at their lamps full of oil, the wise virgins, right? Then there's an audience for the everyone else after that, the foolish virgins, the Christians that weren't ready, the Christians that didn't have their lamps, that weren't watching. Um, Maybe they're lukewarm, they fell away, whatever. But once the rapture occurs, they become part of the body, or maybe they weren't believers at all, and they become part of the body after that. And then another book. So another book is to the Jews, um, who will be like God's main focus, like once the church is taken out. So this idea that Luke is addressed to the bride, that Mark is addressed to the um, tribulation church, or the tribulation saints, and that Matthew is to Judah, or the Jews, whatever. And I like it's just it's there. There's a real. I mean, it's like seriously like major support for this. And I heard it once before, and I was like, that's amazing. And then I heard it again, kind of in a different way, where someone was talking about like how it was another one of these watching channels. There's some there's some major study going on that is just really humbling. Like there's a guy who, these people have been watching for decades, and they've got their Bibles are all marked up, and they've got these charts. This guy that I started watching not too long ago, he has got he's basically like charted the dates of everything that's happened in the Bible. There's a lot of dates that will tell you just flat out what the date was, how when it occurred. Um, it's very detailed actually, and so he has like he has plotted out like every biblical happening, and so you're bound to see some parallels when you do that. Um, but he was just talking about the people that you talk to, and they don't see that there's going to be a pre-trib rapture, and they don't believe it. And the more you talk to them about it, the more they insist that it's a post-trib. That's what it is for them. They're absolutely correct. They are going to be post-trib. And the people that believe that it's going to be mid-trib, they're absolutely right. And just this idea that everyone is placing themselves, which I've talked about too, not about this particular issue, but it all applies, um, where they are seeing what they're seeing because that is who they are. That is where they're supposed to be. And it's not that we all need to get on the same page. We all need to agree on the exact same thing. Um, they are telling you, because I mean, I don't. If you've ever been in some of these religious arguments, I mean, these people fight tooth and nail for what they believe, and if you don't know any better, or if you're not on this wavelength, you're thinking, man, like this person is wrong, and an intensely bad thing for them to be wrong because they're going to end up here. And it's like, maybe that isn't this isn't just a disagreement between two points of view. Maybe this is you talking to a person who has been sorted and they are where they are and you're where you are. They think your position is ridiculous. You think their position is ridiculous. It's not like no one's going to be unhappy with their choice. That's the only thing that they see. The only thing that we see, the people that are waiting for Jesus is Jesus. That's the only thing we see. We're looking straight up at the sky. He's the only person that we can even focus on right now. And anybody else who thinks that's silly is in another place. And that's just what it is. And that's just really true of everything. I keep going back to the canvassing job of the Christians. It's like God has us do this job, but it's not for it to be successful necessarily. Or not for you to have success in the way that you think it's defined, which is having product to show for it, having sales or whatever to show for it. It's so that you can do the job that He called you to do, so that you won't have blood on your hands, so that you will have said the message, so that people can hear the message however many times they need to hear it, so the seed can be planted how many ever times the seed needs to be planted, watered, whatever part of the process that you're in. But also, people are sorting themselves. People are flat out saying like, these people. You go, well, they don't know what they're talking about. People will say, well, I don't want to be in heaven. I want to be in hell. I want to be in hell, right? With the people who do this, the people who do that. And you think, well, those people don't. They're just being ignorant. They're just being blasphemous. It's like, are they though? Are they though? Because the reality is that when they end up there, they can't say that they didn't. That thing is gonna play over and over in their minds, like so. It's just the idea that this Bible is like 5 dimensional or something. Like it's just the most insane thing, like that I've ever thought about. Because people just do see discrepancies, and the first thing, of course, you want to do is try to cover for it and fix it and go, oh well, this translation, that translation, or oh well, I don't know why it says Mark is saying this detail and Luke is saying this detail. Is it this or is it that? And people, and that's good to do. Like it's not bad to do. Be like, is it this or is it that? It can't be two things, but at the same time. Um, after you've gone through all of that stuff with God and you trust Him, you just kind of have to wrestle with it. And, it's just kind of one of those things that stays in your back of your mind. You go, I don't know. And then, you don't let it go, but it doesn't matter. It's like you already, it'll resolve itself somehow. It's like, I don't know, well, maybe people did. Maybe there's some errors in there, but it's still, it all come out in the wash. Maybe he's, whatever. And then to find out, like, that he's writing to different audiences. Like, that would be mind blowingly crazy. That would be mind blowingly crazy because it's like finding out that it's like, I was drawing a parallel of like, those movies where it's like someone gets kidnapped and like, or the person disappears and you don't know if they got kidnapped or you don't know what happened to them, and then you get a ransom letter in the mail, and then it's like they're like a world renowned genius or something, and you get this ransom letter, and the ransom letter is telling you to like do everything, just comply with everything and whatever. But then you notice like some of the words are spelled wrong, and then you're like, you could just leave it there. It's like, well, maybe he was just, obviously he's being held against his will. Like he left an S out of stressed. Like he's going to do that. And then there's another typo. There's another typo. how long before somebody goes, maybe it's a code, and you write out all of the missing things? It's like, did God just, like, what? Like, oh my gosh. Because, yes, while it is a manual, it's also a calendar, it's also a, the cross references in it. Like, once I remember watching Chuck Missler, and he was just talking about how um, the Bible has this, like, advanced, like, tamper proofing thing where, it doesn't have a thing where if you, like, rip out a whole page or rip out a whole book or chapter, like, that information isn't just totally lost. You can find it in other places, and how that's like a tamper proof technique. It's like, yeah, what shepherd was thinking of the tamper proof technique thousands of years ago? Like, it's just like, okay, I'm done questioning. I'm just done entertaining the questions about this. Like, this is every detail that I get is just blowing my mind, blowing my mind, blowing my mind. It's so simply wise, and to use people to make something so simply wise and great is just like the most amazing thing. And then, like, the other thing I was thinking about is, like, I heard a testimony of this guy, and he was just like, he had this journey. It was, he was trying to make his way back to God, but, like, he grew up, loving God, and then fell away and had a couple experiences during that where God was trying to, like, call him back, but he still, like, kept going back. And, eventually he was still a mess, but he was, like, picking up the Bible again and stuff. And he picked up the Bible one day, and he was like, he asked God, he was like, what should I read? Like, he was like, show me, what do you think I should read? Like, what's your favorite verse? Like, what? And he asked God what his favorite verse was, and he said he heard audibly the voice of God tell him Psalm 33. But it wasn't like audibly in his ear. It was like it shook the walls, is what he said. But he was saying, like, how it was just like he noticed how it was like it was powerful and it shook the walls, but it was like gentle at the same time. It was just this weird, like, he was just marveling. He's like, how could it be so powerful like that, but so gentle? Like, how could I be perceiving that? And then he said, like, he was like, okay, maybe I'm going crazy. Like, of course, that's where we all go, or not me, but that's where he went. And he was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna put my Bible down, and if it opens up to Psalm 33, like, I'll know it's God. And of course, that's what happened. And he was just, and then he was talking about how he like fell out, like, it was like he passed out, like, and when he woke up, like, or he was trying to come to, and like when he woke up, he said he was speaking a different language, and he didn't. But it was like not in a language that he recognized. Um, but he could understand what he was saying, and it was like he could understand what he was saying, but it was like he wasn't. He was speaking to God, but it was like the Spirit of God speaking through him, and it was like the Spirit was like asking God to, like, break all the chains off of his life and all of this stuff, and he, like, could understand all that while he was saying that. And I just thought, like, I never in my life heard a story like that, of someone receiving this Holy Spirit in that way, like that. And it just, like, the whole thing was amazing, but, like, it just reminded me, like, you know he has an individual, like, yes, we all have these things, like, okay, you gotta do this, you gotta accept Christ, and you get baptized. We want to have this uniform thing for, and then we hear, we're fine with testimonies being different, but, like, at a certain point we don't like them to be too different. But like that testimony just really like stuck out to me as a reminder that like God hasn't wants an individual path, like an individual relationship with everybody. Like this guy did not go to the church and like he did eventually go to church, which he was like dreading doing. And I think that's how like that's why he was reading his Bible at the time because he was going to a church. But it was like he didn't get it at church. He didn't, and we like those testimonies where it's like they walk into the church and they do the altar call and then they get receive the Spirit or they're instantly set free right then and all these things. Like we like those, we expect those. But like that didn't happen to him. And it was just like on a random day when he just decided to, you know, talk to God and God talked back. It was like, you don't know how many steps you need to take to God. Like, and it's different for everybody. Like, you might take one step toward Him and He takes one step towards you, and that's it. Sometimes you take 50, sometimes it's, 100 or whatever. And it's just really like amazing and cool and so like hands off. Like you do not need to supervise this at all. You know what I mean? Like, and and it really like kind of related, but not entirely thing. Like the last thing that I watched probably was this TikTok, and it was this relationship coach, and she was just saying like, don't believe the idea that most relationships um, end because of lack of communication. Like that's not what it is. She's like, communication is not for you got to understand what communication is for, and communication just for the sake of itself is not going to do anything. She's like, you communicate for connection. That is the point. It's because you want to connect. And I just thought, you know what, you could probably read like look at most relationship things and apply into your relationship with God wherever it's at, because it's really true. It's like you only communicate with the thing that you desire connection with. The desire for connection comes first, and so I mean that right there is, I mean it's very simple, but it again lost in the sauce, especially when you're dealing with a religion and you feel like you got to do a bunch of stuff. And what God is after is like a desire for connection. Like that's what starts the process off. His is already there. He's already done a lot to make sure that his connection is free and clear. And now he's just sitting around by the phone, waiting, picking it up, making sure it works, putting it back down, waiting for somebody to pick up and call. Like it's really true. But people get all hemmed up in the what they feel like they have to do and how they feel like they have to be, and they have to be in better shape, which is the state of the shame thing that I was talking about before. And one thing I didn't get to mention was like how uh, we can get into the shame spiral where we're like then ashamed of being ashamed, and like it's this weird nasty like thing. Like I don't know, you can definitely tell like in the creation story like that's probably what is happening, because it's like they're realizing that they're naked and they're covering themselves. It's like this whole like you can just see like this like feedback loop of shame. And so but then like we want to people don't, I don't know if they don't realize that it's coming from them, especially if you don't have a like a religious background or Christian background and you've never put that together, that because it is an intense feeling, so you're thinking, well, that must be coming from you, that must be coming from this religious thing, that must be coming from some my parents or whatever, because you just can't conceive like that could be coming from here, from the inside. It's like, oh well, I must have some, I need to get rid of some belief that I have so that I can be free, and it's like, no, boo boo, that's just shame doing its job. Um, and So we have to like learn how to live with it, recognize it for what it is. Even though Jesus died and all that, like, yes, you can get rid of shame initially, but you're still gonna always be in your body. And like, your past is your past. Your memories are there. The mistakes that you made are still reaping consequences. All that stuff can still cause that. And then not to mention the new stuff coming in. So, um, but yeah, I was just thinking about all that and wanted to get that out before it got to be too late. And yeah, I think that's it.